The sun bled crimson across the Wyoming horizon, painting the sagebrush and jagged cliffs in hues of fire. Ellie Stratton stood alone on the edge of town, her telescope clutched like a lifeline, its brass gleaming faintly in the dying light. Dust swirled around her boots, kicked up by a restless wind that carried the scent of pine and the faint tang of regret. She was no longer welcome in Laramie, not after her claims about the stars had stirred the townsfolk into a frenzy of fear and superstition. Witch, they'd whispered, their eyes narrowing as she spoke of lights in the sky that danced with purpose. Exiled, she'd been sent to wander, her dreams branded as madness. Ellie adjusted the scarf around her neck, its frayed edges a reminder of the home she'd lost. The night sky was her only companion now, vast and unyielding, speckled with swans that seemed to whisper secrets only she could hear. She'd seen it 3 nights ago, a streak of light, too deliberate to be a shooting star, too bright to be a trick of the eye. It had fallen somewhere beyond the Medicine Bow Mountains, and she was determined to find it. If she could prove it was real, prove the sky held more than myths, maybe she could reclaim her place in the world. The creak of leather and the soft snort of a horse broke her thoughts. She turned, her hand instinctively brushing the knife at her hip. A lone rider emerged from the dusk, his silhouette sharp against the fading red sky. He sat tall in the saddle, his hat tipped low, a Winchester rifle resting across his lap. The man's face was shadowed, but his eyes caught the starlight, glinting with a curiosity that made her breath hitch. "You lost, ma'am?" His voice was low, rough like gravel, but there was a warmth to it, like a fire banked low but ready to blaze. He swung down from his horse, boots hitting the dirt with a thud. He was lean, broad-shouldered, with a jawline that could have been carved from the cliffs around them. His duster coat swayed as he approached, revealing a worn revolver at his side. "Not lost," Ellie said, lifting her chin. "Just looking for something." She tightened her grip on the telescope, its weight grounding her against the stranger's steady gaze. He tilted his head, studying her. "Ain't much out here, but dust and trouble. Name's Levi Boone. And you?" "Ellie Stratton." She hesitated, then added, "I'm following a star." Levi's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "A star, huh? Most folks chase gold or glory. Stars are a new one." He stepped closer, his boots scuffing the earth. "What kind of star sends a lady out here alone?" She bristled at the word lady, but there was no mockery in his tone, only a spark of interest. She pointed to the sky where the first stars were winking into view. "One that fell 3 nights ago. It landed out there, past the mountains. I aim to find it." Levi followed her gaze, his expression unreadable. "Folks in Laramie say you're trouble. Say you see things that ain't there." Her stomach twisted, but she held his eyes. "They're wrong. I see what's real, and I'll prove it." He didn't laugh, didn't scoff. Instead, he nodded, slow and deliberate. "Reckon you believe that, but the Medicine Bow ain't kind to dreamers. Bandits, wolves, and worse out there. You got a plan?" Ellie's fingers traced the edge of her telescope, the cool metal a comfort. "I've got this, and I've got me." Her voice was steady, but inside doubt gnawed. She'd never been this far from town, never faced the wilds alone. Levi crossed his arms, the leather of his coat creaking. "You're either brave or crazy, maybe both." He glanced at the sky, then back at her. "I'm headed that way myself. Got business in the hills. Ride with me, and you might live long enough to find your star." She studied him, searching for a lie in his eyes. There was none. Just a quiet strength and a flicker of something she couldn't name. Trust was a risk, but so was going alone. "All right," she said finally. "But I'm not your damsel, Boone. I'm my own." He chuckled, a low rumble that warmed the chill air. "Never thought you were, Stratton. Let's move before the night gets mean." They set out as the stars thickened overhead, Ellie's telescope strapped to her saddlebag, Levi's horse keeping pace beside her rented mare. The trail wound through sagebrush and rocky outcrops, the air sharp with the scent of earth and leather. Levi rode with an ease that spoke of years in the saddle, his eyes scanning the horizon for threats. Ellie watched him when she thought he wasn't looking, noting the way his hands gripped the reins, steady but ready to draw at a moment's notice. They didn't speak much at first, the silence broken only by the clop of hooves and the distant howl of a coyote. But as the moon rose, silvering the landscape, Levi broke the quiet. "What's so special about this star of yours? Ain't like you can keep it." Ellie's fingers brushed the scarf at her neck, its blue threads embroidered with tiny stars, her mother's last gift before fever took her. "It's not about keeping it. It's about knowing. The sky's got stories, Levi. Stories bigger than us. I want to hear them." He glanced at her, his eyes softening. "My ma used to say the stars were angels' eyes, watching over us. Never much believed it, but I liked the thought." Ellie smiled, the first real one in days. Maybe they're both, angels and stories. They camped that night in a shallow gulch, the fire casting shadows on the rock walls. Levi shared his jerky, and Ellie offered her canteen, the simple act feeling like a truce. As they sat, the sky above blazed with stars, and Ellie pointed out constellations, her voice alive with wonder. Levi listened, his usual guardedness easing, his questions sharp but earnest. But as the fire died to embers, a sound cut through the night, a low, guttural growl from the darkness beyond the gulch. Levi was on his feet in an instant, rifle in hand, his body angled to shield her. Ellie's heart pounded as she drew her knife, her eyes straining to see past the firelight. The growl came again, closer, and then a pair of yellow eyes gleamed in the shadows. "Wolf," Levi whispered, his voice steady but tense. "Stay behind me." Ellie gripped her knife, her pulse racing. She wasn't one to hide, but the weight of the wild pressed against her, raw and unforgiving. The eyes moved closer, joined by another pair, then a third. Levi's rifle gleamed in the moonlight, but before he could fire, a new sound echoed, a sharp human whistle, cutting through the night like a blade. The wolves froze, then melted back into the darkness. Levi lowered his rifle, his jaw tight. "That ain't natural," he muttered, his eyes scanning the shadows. "Someone's out there." Ellie's breath caught as she clutched her telescope, the scarf at her neck suddenly feeling too tight. The stars above seemed to pulse, as if warning her of the danger ahead. Whoever, or whatever, had called off the wolves was watching them, and they were no longer alone in the wild. The night air grew colder, the stars above glinting like shards of ice as Ellie and Levi stood back to back in the gulch, their breaths shallow and sharp. The whistle's echo lingered, a ghostly thread weaving through the silence, and the absence of the wolves' growls felt more ominous than their presence. Ellie's fingers tightened around her knife, its blade catching the faint glow of the dying fire. Levi's rifle was still raised, his eyes darting across the shadowed rocks, searching for the source of that unnatural command. "Stay sharp," Levi murmured, his voice a low rumble that steadied her racing heart. "Whoever's out there ain't friendly." Ellie nodded, her scarf brushing her chin, its embroidered stars a quiet reminder of why she was here. She scanned the darkness, her gaze flicking to the sky, where the constellation Orion hung like a sentinel. The fallen star she sought was out there, beyond the mountains, and she wouldn't let fear, or whoever was watching, stop her. "Could be a trap," she whispered. "Bandits." Levi shook his head, his hat casting a shadow across his face. "Bandits don't tame wolves. This is something else." He lowered his rifle slightly, but kept his finger near the trigger. We need to move. Dawn's a few hours off, and this gulch is too open. They packed quickly, dousing the fire with dirt and saddling the horses in tense silence. Ellie secured her telescope, its brass casing cool against her palm, and mounted her mare. Levi led the way, his horse picking a careful path up the rocky trail. The moon bathed the landscape in silver, turning the sagebrush into ghostly shapes that seemed to shift and whisper. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig set Ellie's nerves alight, but Levi's steady presence kept her grounded. As they climbed higher into the foothills, the trail narrowed, flanked by towering pines that loomed like silent giants. Levi spoke softly, his voice weaving through the night. You ever think about what's up there, beyond the stars? Not just stories, but must something real? Ellie glanced at him, surprised by the question. His profile was sharp against the moonlight, his eyes fixed on the path, but softer, like he was seeing something far beyond the trail. All the time, she said. The sky's not just light and shadow. It's alive, Levi. It moves, it speaks. That star I saw, it wasn't falling to die. It was coming here for a reason. He looked at her then, his gaze holding hers longer than necessary. You talk like it's got a heart, like it chose you. Maybe it did, she said, half smiling despite the tension. Or maybe I'm just stubborn enough to chase it. Levi's lips curved, a rare, genuine smile that warmed the chill between them. Stubborn's good out here, keeps you alive. Their banter eased the weight of the night, but the unease lingered. They rode for hours, the trail twisting through canyons and up rocky slopes until the sky began to lighten, a faint blush of dawn creeping over the horizon. Levi reined in his horse near a cluster of boulders, their jagged edges softened by moss. We'll rest here, he said. Horses need it, and so do we. Ellie dismounted, her legs aching from the ride. She untied her telescope and set it up, scanning the sky for any sign of her star's path. The dawn was too bright now, washing out the constellations, but she traced the memory of that blazing streak in her mind. It had been too precise, too purposeful, to be chance. As she adjusted the lens, Levi crouched nearby, checking his revolver with practiced ease. You always carry that thing? He asked, nodding toward the telescope. Ain't exactly practical for the trail. It's more practical than you think, she replied, not looking up. It sees what others miss. Like you, believing in me when Laramie didn't. He paused, his hand stilling on the revolver. I ain't one for blind faith, Ellie, but you've got a fire in you. I've seen men with less grit give up out here. You're different. Her cheeks warmed, and she busied herself with the telescope to hide it. Flattery won't get you far, Boone. Who said I'm flattering? His tone was teasing, but his eyes were serious, lingering on her in a way that made her heart skip. Before she could respond, a shadow moved among the boulders, a flicker of motion, too quick to be a trick of the light. Levi was on his feet, revolver drawn, his body shielding her once more. Show yourself, he called, his voice cutting through the morning air. A figure stepped into view, hands raised. He was tall, wiry, with a weathered face, half hidden by a battered hat. A necklace of bone and feathers hung around his neck, glinting in the dawn. Easy, friend, he said, his voice smooth but edged with caution. I mean no harm. Name's Jasper Cole. Ellie's grip tightened on her telescope. She'd heard of Jasper, a trader who roamed the frontier, bartering with settlers and native tribes alike. His reputation was murky. Some called him a friend, others a snake. What do you want? She asked, stepping beside Levi, her knife at the ready. Jasper's eyes flicked to her, sharp and assessing. Saw your fire last night. Heard the wolves, too. You're lucky they didn't tear you apart. He lowered his hands slowly, a smile curling his lips. I'm guessing you're the Stargazer from Laramie. Folks talk about you, say you're chasing ghosts in the sky. Levi's revolver didn't waver. You got a point, Cole? Or you just here to flap your gums? Jasper chuckled, unfazed. I know these mountains. Know what's out there. That light you're chasing, miss, it ain't no star. It's something older, something the Shoshone speak of in whispers. They call it the sky fire. Ellie's breath caught. The Shoshone were the native people of these lands, their stories woven into the mountains like the roots of the pines. If they knew of her star, it was no mere fantasy. What do you know about it? She asked, her voice steady despite the thrill racing through her. Jasper's smile faded, his eyes darkening. Enough to know it's dangerous. Enough to know you'll need help to find it. He glanced at Levi, then back at her. I can guide you for a price. Levi snorted. Ain't nothing free out here. What's your game, Cole? No game, Jasper said, spreading his hands. Just a man who knows the trails. And I know the Shoshone. They won't take kindly to strangers poking around their sacred grounds. Ellie exchanged a look with Levi. Trusting Jasper was a gamble, but his knowledge could be the key to her star. Levi's jaw tightened, but he lowered his revolver slightly. You try anything, Cole, and you'll answer to me. Jasper nodded, his smile returning. Fair enough. We got a deal? Ellie hesitated, her fingers brushing the scarf at her neck. The embroidered stars seemed to pulse under her touch, urging her forward. Deal, she said finally. But you follow my lead. As they set out, Jasper leading the way, the mountains loomed larger, their peaks sharp against the rising sun. The trail grew steeper, the air thinner, and Ellie's heart pounded with a mix of fear and anticipation. Jasper's words about the sky fire echoed in her mind, intertwining with the memory of her mother's scarf. Its stars, a symbol of the dreams she'd never abandon. But as they rounded a bend, a distant rumble shook the ground, not thunder, but something heavier, like the earth itself was stirring. Levi reined in his horse, his hand back on his revolver. Jasper's smile vanished, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the ridge above. Ellie followed his gaze, her telescope forgotten as a shadow moved against the rocks, a figure cloaked and silent, watching them from the heights. The shadow on the ridge vanished as quickly as it appeared, swallowed by the jagged rocks, but its presence lingered like a storm cloud over the trio. Ellie's heart thumped against her ribs, her fingers tightening around the reins as her mare snorted, sensing the tension. The rumble in the earth had faded, but the air felt charged, heavy with the promise of something vast and unknowable. Levi's hand rested on his revolver, his eyes locked on the ridge, while Jasper's usual swagger was replaced by a wary stillness, his hand hovering near the knife at his belt. Keep moving, Levi said, his voice low but firm, cutting through the uneasy silence. Whoever that was, they're not gone. Ellie nodded, her scarf brushing her chin, its embroidered stars catching the morning light. She glanced at Jasper, whose eyes flicked between the trail and the ridge, his earlier confidence shaken. You know who that was, don't you? She asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. Jasper's jaw tightened, but he didn't meet her gaze. Could be anyone. Prospectors, outlaws, Shoshone scouts. This land's got eyes everywhere. Eyes that call off wolves? Levi countered, his tone hard. You're holding out, Cole. Spill it. Jasper hesitated, then sighed, his breath visible in the crisp air. There's talk among the tribes. A group, outcasts, mostly, calling themselves the Keepers. They guard the sacred grounds, the places tied to the sky fire. If they think you're after it, they won't ask questions before they act. Ellie's pulse quickened. The sky fire. her star. It was real, and others knew of it, others who'd kill to protect it. She urged her mare forward, her eyes scanning the ridge for any sign of movement. Then we'd better find it first. The trail climbed steeper, winding through a narrow canyon where the walls rose like sentinels, their surfaces etched with ancient patterns that seemed to pulse in the sunlight. Ellie's telescope bounced against her saddlebag, a reminder of her purpose, but the weight of the unknown pressed against her. The keepers, the sky fire, the shadow on the ridge, it was all connected, and she was riding straight into the heart of it. As noon burned overhead, the canyon opened into a high plateau, the ground littered with strange, blackened stones that gleamed like glass. Ellie dismounted, her boots crunching against the odd terrain. She knelt, brushing her fingers over a stone, its surface smooth and unnaturally warm. "This isn't natural," she murmured, her mind racing. "It's like the earth was burned." Levi crouched beside her, his fingers grazing the same stone. "Meteorite, maybe. Seen something like it once, out near Cheyenne." His touch lingered near hers, a fleeting warmth that sent a shiver through her despite the sun. Jasper stayed mounted, his eyes darting to the horizon. "We're close," he said, his voice tight. "Too close. The Shoshone say this is where the sky fire fell long come. It's sacred, forbidden." Ellie stood, her scarf fluttering in the wind. "Forbidden or not, I'm finding it." She pulled out her telescope, scanning the plateau for any sign of her star's landing. The blackened stones stretched far, their patterns forming a spiral that seemed to draw her eye to the center, where a cluster of boulders stood like a crude altar. Before she could move, a sharp crack split the air, a gunshot echoing off the canyon walls. Levi tackled her to the ground, his body shielding hers as dirt sprayed around them. Jasper's horse reared and he cursed, drawing his knife as he leaped to the ground. "Ambush," he shouted, diving behind a boulder. Ellie's breath came in gasps, Levi's weight pinning her as another shot rang out, splintering a nearby rock. His face was inches from hers, his eyes fierce but steady. "Stay down," he growled, rolling off her to draw his revolver. He fired into the rocks above, where flashes of movement betrayed their attackers. Ellie scrambled to her knees, her knife in hand, her telescope forgotten in the chaos. The plateau was a death trap, open, exposed, with nowhere to run but back into the canyon. She crawled to Jasper's side, her heart pounding as bullets whined overhead. "Who are they?" she demanded. "Keepers," Jasper spat, his eyes wild. "Told you they don't play nice." Levi fired again, his shots precise, but the attackers were hidden, their figures darting between rocks like ghosts. Ellie's gaze snapped to the spiral of blackened stones, the altar at its center. Something glinted there, a faint, unnatural light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Her star, it had to be. She started to move, but Levi grabbed her arm, his grip iron. "You'll get killed," he said, his voice rough with urgency. "We need cover, not heroics." "I'm not leaving it," she snapped, wrenching free. The light pulsed brighter, calling into her, and she ran, ducking low as bullets kicked up dirt around her. Levi cursed, firing to cover her, his shots echoing like thunder. She reached the altar, her hands shaking as she brushed aside loose stones. Beneath them was a shard of metal, no bigger than her hand, glowing with a soft, silvery light that seemed to hum with life. It wasn't a star. It was something else, something not of this earth. Her fingers closed around it, its warmth seeping into her skin, and for a moment the world fell silent, the gunfire fading as visions flooded her mind, flashes of stars, of skies unknown, of a truth so vast it stole her breath. A scream snapped her back. Jasper was down, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his fingers. Levi was at his side, dragging him behind a boulder, his revolver blazing. Ellie shoved the shard into her satchel, her scarf catching on a jagged rock as she ran to them. The attackers were closing in, their shadows lengthening as the sun dipped lower. "We can't hold them," Levi shouted, his face streaked with dirt. Back to the canyon. Ellie helped Jasper to his feet, his weight heavy against her. They stumbled toward the canyon, Levi covering their retreat with precise shots that kept the keepers at bay. The trail was narrow, the walls closing in, and Ellie's mind raced. The shard in her satchel felt alive, its warmth pulsing against her hip, and she knew it was what the keepers wanted, what they'd kill for. They reached a bend in the canyon, the walls offering brief shelter. Levi reloaded, his hands steady despite the chaos. Jasper slumped against a rock, his face pale but his eyes sharp. "They won't stop," he rasped. "That thing you found, it's their relic, their god." Ellie's hand went to her satchel, the shard's glow faintly visible through the leather. "It's not a god," she said, her voice trembling with conviction. "It's a message, and I'm going to read it." Levi met her eyes, a flicker of awe breaking through his grim focus. "You're crazier than I thought," he said, but there was pride in his voice. "We need to move, they're coming." As they prepared to run, a new sound rose, a low, rhythmic chant, echoing through the canyon like a heartbeat. The keepers were closing in, their voices carrying an ancient power that made Ellie's scarf feel like a noose. The shard burned against her side, and she knew there was no turning back. The skyfire wasn't just her dream. It was a secret that could change everything, and the keepers would spill blood to keep it buried. The chant of the keepers pulsed through the canyon, a relentless drumbeat that seemed to shake the very stones under Ellie's feet. She stumbled alongside Jasper, his arm slung over her shoulder, his blood soaking into her sleeve as they hurried down the narrow trail. Levi led the way, his revolver still drawn, his eyes scanning every shadow. As the canyon walls loomed closer, funneling them into a bottleneck where escape felt like a fading hope. The shard in Ellie's satchel burned against her hip, its warmth a constant reminder of the danger they'd stumbled into. Her scarf, now torn from the jagged rock, fluttered against her neck, its embroidered stars frayed but defiant. The chanting grew louder, closer, a chorus of voices that carried both reverence and menace. Levi glanced back, his face etched with strain. "We're sitting ducks here," he hissed. "There's a cave up ahead, old miners' hideout. We make it there, we might have a chance." Ellie nodded, her breath ragged as she half-dragged Jasper, whose steps faltered with every jolt. "You still with us, Cole?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Jasper managed a weak grin, his face pale as moonlight. "Takes more than a bullet to kill me, Stargazer, but you're making me regret this deal." "Save your charm for the keepers," Levi snapped, but there was a flicker of amusement in his eyes. "Move!" They rounded a bend, the canyon opening slightly to reveal a dark gash in the rock face. A cave half hidden by vines and shadow. Levi pushed through the overgrowth, holding it back for Ellie and Jasper to stumble inside. The air was cool and damp, smelling of earth and decay, and the darkness swallowed them as they collapsed against the rough walls. The chanting echoed outside, fainter now, but still relentless, like the heartbeat of the mountain itself. Levi crouched near the entrance, his silhouette tense against the dim light filtering through the vines. "They'll find us soon," he whispered. "We need a plan, and it better be good." Ellie set Jasper down, checking his wound. The bullet had grazed his shoulder, not deep but messy, and she tore a strip from her scarf to bind it, wincing as the embroidered stars disappeared under blood. "Hold still," she muttered, her hands shaking as she tied the knot. Jasper winced but chuckled. "You're a lousy nurse, Stratton. Lucky you're better with stars than bandages. Keep talking and I'll let you bleed out," she shot back, but her lips twitched. The moment of levity a brief spark in the dark. She glanced at Levi, who was reloading his revolver with quick, practiced movements. His focus was absolute, but his jaw was tight, betraying the weight of their situation. Ellie pulled the shard from her satchel, its silvery glow illuminating the cave with an eerie light. It was smooth, almost liquid in its sheen, and its warmth pulsed in her hand, sending a shiver up her spine. "This is what they want," she said, her voice low. "It's not just a relic. It's alive somehow. I saw things when I touched it, images like dreams, but real." Levi's eyes flicked to the shard, then to her, his expression unreadable. "You're saying that things got a mind. Ellie, that's crazy talk. Crazier than wolves obeying a whistle," she countered, holding his gaze. "You believed in me before. Believe in this." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair, dislodging his hat. "Fine, but if that glow draws those fanatics in here, we're done for." Jasper coughed, his voice hoarse. "She's right, Boone. The Shoshone stories say the Skyfire speaks. Not in words, but in visions. The keepers think it's their god's voice. They'll die or kill to keep it." Levi muttered something under his breath. Probably a curse, but he nodded. "All right, we hold here till nightfall, then slip out. Cole, you good to move?" Jasper grimaced, shifting against the wall. "I'll manage, but if we're running, you're carrying my pack, cowboy." Levi snorted, a reluctant grin breaking through. "Dream on." The moment of humor faded as the chanting outside grew sharper, footsteps crunching on the canyon floor. Ellie tucked the shard back into her satchel, her heart pounding. The cave was a temporary refuge, but it felt like a trap. The walls pressing in as the keeper's voices grew closer. She crawled to Levi's side, peering through the vines. Shadows moved outside. 5, maybe 6 figures, cloaked and silent now, their movements deliberate as they searched the trail. Levi's hand brushed hers, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through her. "Stay low," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. She nodded, her cheeks flushing despite the danger, and she cursed herself for noticing the way his shoulder pressed against hers in the cramped space. Then a new sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingers on stone. Ellie froze, her eyes darting to the back of the cave. The darkness there was absolute, but the tapping grew louder, closer, echoing in a way that made her skin crawl. Levi turned, his revolver raised, and Jasper's hand went to his knife, his wound forgotten. "What the hell is that?" Levi muttered, his voice barely audible. Ellie's fingers found her scarf, the remaining stars of faint comfort. She grabbed her telescope, not to look at the sky, but to use its lens as a mirror, angling it toward the sound. In the dim glow of the shard's light, she caught a glimpse. Eyes, human but wild, staring from a hidden crevice at the cave's rear. Her breath caught, and she grabbed Levi's arm, pointing. "We're not alone," she whispered, her voice trembling. Before Levi could respond, a figure lunged from the crevice. A woman cloaked in furs, her face painted with streaks of ochre and ash. She held a bone-handled knife, its blade glinting as she raised it toward Ellie. Levi moved faster, tackling the woman to the ground, his revolver pressed to her temple. "Don't move," he growled. The woman's eyes burned with defiance, but she stilled, her chest heaving. "You defile the sky fire," she hissed, her voice low and melodic like a chant. "It is not yours to take." Ellie's heart raced as she stepped forward, the shard's glow leaking from her satchel. "We're not here to steal," she said, her voice steady despite the fear. "I want to understand it. Tell me what it is. The woman's eyes narrowed, flicking to the satchel. You've seen its visions. You know it's more than stone, but you are not ready for its truth. Levi tightened his grip. Talk or you're done. The woman laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Kill me and the others will come. The sky fire belongs to the keepers. You'll never leave this mountain alive. Jasper, still slumped against the wall, coughed out a laugh. Well, ain't this a party? We've got fanatics outside, a zealot inside, and a glowing rock that's going to get us all killed. Ellie shot him a look, but couldn't suppress a nervous chuckle. The absurdity of it, trapped in a cave with a bleeding traitor, a cowboy who'd become her anchor, and a mystic threatening her life, was almost too much. But the shard's warmth pulsed against her, urging her on. She knelt before the woman, meeting her gaze. I've seen the visions. They chose me. Tell me why. The woman's expression shifted, surprise flickering in her eyes. Before she could answer, a shout came from outside, followed by the crack of a rifle. The keepers had found the cave. Levi cursed, releasing the woman to cover the entrance. The chanting swelled, and the woman smiled, a chilling promise in her eyes. The sky fire will judge you, she said, and then she was gone, slipping back into the crevice like a shadow. The woman's disappearance into the crevice left a hollow silence, broken only by the distant chant of the keepers and the echo of the rifle shot outside. Ellie's heart pounded, her fingers clutching the satchel, where the shard's faint glow pulsed like a second heartbeat. Levi crouched at the cave's entrance, his revolver steady, his silhouette taut against the vine-draped opening. Jasper leaned against the wall, his breathing shallow but stubborn. The makeshift bandage from Ellie's scarf stained dark with his blood. The air in the cave was thick, heavy with the scent of damp stone and the weight of their precarious refuge. We can't stay here, Levi whispered, his voice a low growl that carried both urgency and restraint. They'll smoke us out or worse. His eyes flicked to Ellie, then to Jasper. Can you move, Cole? Jasper grunted, pushing himself upright with a wince. Not dead yet, Boone, but I ain't running no races. Ellie's gaze darted to the crevice where the woman had vanished. The keepers were closing in, their chants a relentless tide, but the shard in her satchel felt like a tether, urging her deeper into the mountain's secrets. She came from somewhere, Ellie said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. There's another way out. Levi's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Worth a shot. Lead on, Stargazer. They moved quickly, Ellie guiding them toward the crevice, her telescope slung over her shoulder, its brass casing clinking softly against her satchel. The passage was narrow, the walls slick with moisture, and the shard's glow cast eerie shadows that danced like specters. Levi stayed close behind her, his hand brushing her arm to steady her when she stumbled, the contact sending a warmth through her that rivaled the shard's. Jasper trailed, his steps uneven but determined, muttering curses under his breath. The crevice widened into a larger chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. The air cooler and tinged with a metallic scent. Faint carvings lined the walls, spirals and stars, like the ones on her scarf, etched deep into the stone. Ellie's breath caught as she traced one with her fingers, the shard in her satchel pulsing brighter, as if responding to the ancient marks. This place is old, Jasper rasped, leaning against a wall. Older than the Shoshone, older than us. Levi scanned the chamber, his revolver still drawn. Old or not, we need an exit. Keep moving. Ellie nodded, but her eyes lingered on the carvings, her mind racing with the visions the shard had shown her. Skies ablaze, worlds beyond her own. She felt Levi's gaze on her, intense and searching, and when she met his eyes, there was something new in them, a quiet trust, laced with something deeper, unspoken. Her cheeks warmed, and she turned away, focusing on the far wall where a faint draft stirred the air. They found a tunnel, barely wide enough for one, leading deeper into the mountain. The chanting outside had faded, but the sense of being hunted lingered, pressing against Ellie's spine. She led the way, the shards glow lighting their path, her scarf brushing her neck like a whispered promise. Levi stayed close, his presence a steady anchor, and she was acutely aware of every brush of his arm, every catch of his breath. The tunnel opened into a smaller cavern, its floor smooth and sloping downward, a trickle of water glinting in the shard's light. A narrow ledge circled a deep pool, its surface still as glass, reflecting the faint glow like a mirror of the sky. Ellie paused, her reflection staring back, her scarf's frayed stars framing her face. Levi stopped beside her, his shoulder grazing hers, and for a moment, the danger felt far away. "We're safe here," he said softly, his voice rough but gentle. "For now." Ellie turned to him, her heart stuttering as his eyes held hers, the dim light softening the hard lines of his face. "Safe's a tall order out here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but she didn't pull away when his hand found hers, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. He stepped closer, his breath mingling with hers, the air between them charged like the moment before a storm. "You keep chasing stars, Ellie, and I keep following. Reckon that makes us both fools." Her lips curved, a nervous laugh escaping. "Maybe, but you're still here." His thumb brushed her knuckles, a slow, deliberate motion that sent a shiver through her. "Ain't nowhere else I'd rather be," he murmured, and the words hung between them, heavy with meaning. The space between them closed, drawn by a pull neither could deny. His hand slid to her waist, gentle but firm, and she tilted her head, her scarf slipping slightly as his lips brushed hers. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like testing the edge of a cliff, but it deepened, a quiet hunger igniting as she pressed closer, her hands finding the rough leather of his coat. The shard's warmth pulsed in her satchel, echoing the heat in her chest. And for a moment, the world was just them, two souls tangled in the dark, the cave's silence wrapping them like a vow. A cough broke the spell, sharp and deliberate. Jasper, leaning against the cavern wall, raised an eyebrow, his grin weak but mischievous. "Well, ain't that sweet? But unless you're planning to kiss your way out of this mountain, we got problems." Ellie pulled back, her face flushing, and Levi cleared his throat, his hand lingering on her waist before dropping. "You got a knack for bad timing, Cole," he muttered, but his eyes twinkled with reluctant amusement. Jasper chuckled, wincing as he adjusted his bandage. "Just keeping you honest, Boone. Now, where's this exit?" Ellie's fingers brushed her lips, the memory of Levi's touch lingering as she forced her focus back to the cavern. The pool's reflection caught her eye, and she knelt, peering into its depths. The shard's glow revealed something beneath the surface, a glint of metal, half buried in the silt, shaped like the shard but larger, its edges carved with the same spirals as the walls. "Levi," she whispered, pointing, "there's more." He crouched beside her, his shoulder brushing hers, the intimacy of moments ago still humming between them. "Another piece of your star?" he asked, his voice low, meant for her alone. She nodded, her heart racing. "It's not just one piece, it's a puzzle." She reached into the water, her fingers closing around the second shard, its warmth flooding her with the new visions. Flashes of a machine, a sky torn open, a warning. She gasped, pulling back, and Levi caught her, his hand steady on her shoulders. "You all right?" he asked, his voice thick with concern. She nodded, clutching the new shard, its glow merging with the first. "It's trying to tell us something big." Before they could process it, A low rumble shook the cavern, dust falling from the ceiling. The keeper's chant was back, closer now, echoing through the tunnel they'd left behind. Jasper cursed, struggling to his feet. They're in the cave. We're out of time. Levi's hand found Ellie's, squeezing once before releasing her. Grab your star pieces, Stargazer. We're running. She tucked the second shard into her satchel, the two fragments humming together, their light casting shadows of stars across the cavern walls. Her scarf, now tattered, clung to her neck, a symbol of her resolve. As they moved toward the next tunnel, Levi's hand brushed her back, a silent promise to stay close. The keepers' voices grew louder, their footsteps heavy, and Ellie knew the chase was far from over. But with Levi beside her, and the shards, secrets in her grasp, she felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. The tunnel stretched ahead, a dark vein burrowing deeper into the mountain's heart, its walls slick with moisture that glistened in the twin glow of the shards in Ellie's satchel. The keeper's chants echoed behind them, a relentless tide of voices that seemed to claw at their heels. Ellie ran, her boots slipping on the uneven stone, the weight of the shards and her telescope pulling at her shoulders. Levi was at her side, his revolver drawn, his free hand steadying her when the path grew treacherous. Jasper lagged behind, his breath ragged, but his steps dogged. The blood-soaked scarf bandage, a stark reminder of their dwindling odds. The air was thick, heavy with the metallic tang of the cavern and the pulse of something ancient, as if the mountain itself were alive. Ellie's scarf, now little more than a tattered ribbon, clung to her neck, its remaining stars catching the shard's light like a faint echo of the sky. The visions from the second shard still burned in her mind, flashes of a machine, a sky torn open, a warning that felt like a weight on her chest. She didn't know what it meant, but the shard's warmth urged her forward, a promise of answers buried deeper in the dark. Levi glanced at her, his eyes sharp despite the strain. You sure this tunnel's an exit? Stargazer? Feels like we're heading to hell itself. She managed a grim smile, her fingers brushing the satchel. If it is, I'm bringing the stars with me. Jasper coughed out a laugh, wincing as he clutched his shoulder. You two are going to make me sick with all this star talk. Just find us a way out, Stratton. The tunnel curved sharply, opening into a vast chamber that stole Ellie's breath. The ceiling arched high, studded with crystals that refracted the shard's glow into a kaleidoscope of light, painting the walls with patterns of stars and spirals. At the chamber's center stood a structure, half ruined, half impossible, a framework of metal and stone, its surfaces etched with the same symbols as the shards. It wasn't Shoshone, wasn't anything human. It hummed faintly, a low vibration that thrummed in Ellie's bones. What in God's name? Levi's voice trailed off, his revolver lowering as he stared at the structure. This ain't no miner's hideout. Jasper staggered to a stop, his eyes wide. The Skyfire's temple, he whispered. The Shoshone spoke of it, but I thought it was just stories. Ellie approached the structure, her satchel glowing brighter, the shards pulsing in rhythm with the hum. The air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes, and her scarf fluttered as if caught in a breeze that didn't exist. She reached out, her fingers hovering over the metal, and a jolt of energy shot through her, a vision, clearer than before, of a sky ablaze with light, of figures not human moving through stars, of a message meant for her. She gasped, stumbling back, and Levi caught her, his hands firm on her waist. Easy, he murmured, his voice grounding her. What did you see? She shook her head, her heart racing. It's not just a relic. It's a key to something bigger, something they... She froze, her eyes snapping to the tunnel behind them. The chants had stopped, replaced by the soft scrape of footsteps. The keepers were here. Levi spun, raising his revolver, but before he could act, a voice cut through the chamber, low, commanding, and achingly familiar. "Lower your weapon, Boone. You're outnumbered." Ellie's blood ran cold. From the shadows stepped a man, tall and lean, his face half hidden by a wide-brimmed hat. His coat was worn, but finely tailored, and a silver star glinted on his chest, a sheriff's badge. But it was his eyes, sharp and green, that stopped her heart. She knew those eyes. She'd seen them every day in Laramie, before her exile. "Wyatt," she whispered, her voice breaking. Wyatt Earp, the man who'd stood by her in Laramie, who'd defended her when the townsfolk called her a witch, who'd kissed her under the stars before promising to join her later, only to vanish the night she was banished. Levi's revolver wavered, his gaze flicking between Ellie and the man. "You know him?" Wyatt stepped closer, his smile tinged with regret. "Hello, Ellie. Been a while." Her fingers clutched her scarf, the frayed stars a bitter reminder of the trust she'd given him. "You're one of them," she said, her voice trembling with betrayal. "A keeper." He inclined his head, the badge glinting in the shard's light. "I didn't choose this, not at first, but the sky fire. It changes you. It's bigger than us, Ellie. Bigger than your dreams." Levi stepped forward, his revolver steady now, aimed at Wyatt's chest. "You sold her out. Got her run out of town. And now you're what? Leading these fanatics?" Wyatt's eyes darkened, but he didn't flinch. "I protected her the only way I could. Laramie would have burned her at the stake if I hadn't pushed for exile. But you've got the shards now, Ellie. That changes things." Jasper, still clutching his shoulder, laughed bitterly. "Well, ain't this a twist? Your old flame's a cultist, Stratton. You sure know how to pick 'em." Ellie's chest tightened, her mind reeling. Wyatt had been her anchor, her confidant, the one who'd listened to her talk of stars and believed her. Or so she'd thought. The visions, the shards, the keepers, it all circled back to him. "Why?" she demanded, stepping toward him, her voice raw. "Why lie to me?" Wyatt's gaze softened, but there was steel beneath it. "Because the sky fire isn't yours to claim. It's a warning, Ellie. A message from beyond, meant for the keepers to guard. You're stirring things that should stay buried." The chamber hummed louder, the structure at its center vibrating, as the shards in Ellie's satchel glowed brighter. She felt their pull, their urgency, and she knew Wyatt was wrong. The message wasn't for the keepers, it was for her. But before she could speak, shadows moved at the chamber's edges, more keepers, their faces painted, their knives gleaming. They surrounded the trio, silent and deadly, their eyes fixed on the satchel. Levi grabbed Ellie's arm, pulling her back. "We're leaving, now!" Wyatt raised a hand, stopping the keepers from advancing. "Give me the shards, Ellie," he said, his voice almost pleading. "You don't know what you're unleashing." She clutched her satchel, the shard's warmth of fire in her veins. "I know enough," she said, her voice steady despite the betrayal cutting through her. "You betrayed me once, Wyatt. I won't let you stop me now." The keepers tightened their circle, and Levi's revolver clicked as he cocked it. Jasper drew his knife, his grin feral, despite his wound. The chamber's hum grew deafening, the structure trembling as if waking from a long sleep. Ellie's scarf slipped, falling to the floor, its stars glowing faintly in the chaos. And then, with a sound like shattering glass, the structure flared to life, a beam of light shooting upward, piercing the ceiling and illuminating the chamber in blinding white. Ellie shielded her eyes, her heart pounding as the shards burned against her skin. The keepers froze, their chant silenced, and Wyatt's face twisted with something like fear or awe. The light pulsed, and Ellie saw it again. The vision of a machine, a sky torn open, and a truth that could either save her or destroy everything. The blinding light from the structure bathed the chamber in a surreal glow, casting jagged shadows that danced across the carved walls like ghosts of forgotten stars. Ellie stood frozen, her satchel burning against her hip as the shards pulsed in time with the structure's hum, their warmth flooding her with fragmented visions, skies alive with fire, machines that breathed, a warning etched in light. Her scarf lay crumpled on the floor, its frayed stars a faint echo of the brilliance above. The keepers, their painted faces stark in the glow, stood rooted, their knives lowered as if the light held them in thrall. Wyatt's expression was a storm of awe and dread, his sheriff's badge glinting like a false promise. Levi's hand found Ellie's, his grip tight, grounding her as the chamber trembled. "Whatever this is, Stargazer, it's about to get messy," he whispered, his revolver still trained on Wyatt. His voice was steady, but his eyes flicked to the keepers, calculating their next move. Jasper, slumped against a wall, clutched his wounded shoulder, his grin crooked but defiant. "Messy? Boone, we're knee-deep in crazy, and you're worried about a little mess?" He coughed, wincing, but his eyes sparkled with grim humor. "Somebody better tell this glowing contraption to pick a side." Ellie's heart raced, the shard's heat urging her toward the structure. She stepped forward, shaking off Levi's hand, her boots crunching on the stone floor. "It's not a weapon," she said, her voice cutting through the hum. "It's a message, and I'm going to hear it." Wyatt moved to block her, his hand outstretched, his face torn between desperation and resolve. "Ellie, stop. You don't know what you're doing. The sky fire's not meant for us. It's a warning, not a gift." She met his gaze, the sting of his betrayal sharp in her chest. "You don't get to decide that, Wyatt. Not after you lied to me, left me to rot in exile." Her fingers brushed the satchel, the shard's glow leaking through the leather. "This is my truth now." The keeper stirred, their trance breaking as one. A woman with hawk-like eyes raised her knife, her voice low and fervent. "The sky fire speaks only to the chosen. You are not one of us." Levi stepped between Ellie and the woman, his revolver clicking. "Back off, or you'll be talking to my bullets instead." The tension snapped taut, the air thick with the threat of violence, but before anyone could move, the structure flared again, a pulse of light so bright it forced them all to shield their eyes. The hum became a roar, and the ground shook, sending pebbles skittering across the floor. Ellie stumbled, catching herself against the structure, and the shards in her satchel burned hotter, their light merging with the machines. A vision flooded her, clearer now. A sky split open, a voice not human but urgent, speaking of a coming storm, of a choice that would shape worlds. She gasped, pulling back, her hands trembling. Levi was at her side in an instant, his arm around her waist, his voice low and urgent. "What's it saying, Ellie?" She shook her head, struggling to find words. "It's a warning. Something's coming. Something big. We have to finish this." Jasper coughed, his laugh weak but sharp. "Finish it? We're trapped in a glowing cave with a bunch of knife-happy zealots and your ex-lover wearing a badge. This is the worst dance I've ever been to." Levi shot him a look, but his lips twitched. "Keep your pants on, Cole. We're not done yet." The keepers advanced, their knives gleaming, but Wyatt raised a hand, his voice sharp. "Stand down." His eyes locked on Ellie, pleading. "Give me the shards and I'll get you out. I swear it." Ellie's fingers tightened on the satchel, her scarf's absence leaving her neck bare, vulnerable. "You swore a lot of things, Wyatt. None of them held." Before he could respond, a new sound cut through the chaos, a low mechanical groan from the structure. The light shifted, focusing into a beam that struck the chamber's ceiling. revealing a hidden panel carved with the same spirals as the shards. It slid open with a grinding screech, exposing a tunnel that glowed faintly, as if lit by starlight. Levi grabbed Ellie's arm, pulling her toward the tunnel. "That's our way out. Move!" Jasper staggered to his feet, his grin lopsided. "If I die in there, I'm haunting you both." The keepers lunged, their knives flashing, but Levi fired a warning shot that echoed like thunder, forcing them back. Wyatt hesitated, his hand hovering near his revolver, his eyes torn between duty and something softer, something that looked like regret. Ellie met his gaze one last time, then turned, running with Levi and Jasper into the tunnel. The passage was narrow, the walls pulsing with the same eerie light, and the shards in Ellie's satchel hummed louder, guiding her like a beacon. The tunnel sloped upward, the air growing fresher, and soon they emerged into a high meadow, the night sky sprawling above them, stars blazing brighter than she'd ever seen. The mountain loomed behind, its peak shrouded in mist, and the keeper's chants were distant now, muffled by stone. Ellie collapsed to her knees, her breath coming in gasps, the shard's warmth a steady pulse against her hip. Levi knelt beside her, his hand on her shoulder, his touch both fierce and gentle. "You all right, Stargazer?" She nodded, her eyes fixed on the sky where a faint streak of light moved. Not a star, but something else. Something alive. "It's out there," she whispered. "The rest of it. The shards are calling to it." Jasper slumped against a rock, his face pale, but his grin intact. "Great. More glowing nonsense. You two gonna kiss again? Or can we focus on not dying?" Ellie's cheeks flushed, and Levi coughed, his hand dropping from her shoulder. "Shut it, Cole," he muttered, but his eyes lingered on Ellie, a spark of warmth breaking through the tension. Before she could respond, the ground trembled again, stronger this time, and a shadow passed overhead. A shape, vast and silent, moving against the stars. Ellie's heart stopped as she grabbed her telescope, training it on the sky. It wasn't a cloud, wasn't a bird. It was a structure, like the one in the cave, but massive, hovering, its surface glinting with the same silvery light as the shards. Levi's voice was a low growl. "What the hell is that?" Ellie lowered the telescope, her hands shaking. "It's not from here," she said, her voice barely audible. "It's what the shards were calling." The keeper's chants rose again, closer now, and Wyatt's voice cut through the night, sharp and desperate. "Ellie, you can't run from this." She clutched the satchel, the shard's glow illuminating her face, her scarf long gone, but its stars alive in her eyes. The sky was no longer just a dream. It was a battlefield, and she was at its center, with Levi by her side, and a truth that could either save them or burn them all. The meadow lay hushed under the vast Wyoming sky, the stars above blazing with a clarity that seemed to mock the chaos below. The massive structure hovered silently, its silvery surface pulsing with the same unearthly light as the shards in Ellie's satchel, casting an ethereal glow over the grass. Ellie stood rooted, her telescope dangling from her shoulder, her eyes wide as she stared at the impossible shape. A machine, a visitor from beyond, its presence both a promise and a threat. Levi was beside her, his revolver still drawn, his body angled to shield her from the approaching chance of the keepers. Jasper leaned against the rock, his wounded shoulder slumped, but his eyes sharp, glinting with a mix of awe and defiance. The air thrummed with energy, the shard's warmth burning through Ellie's satchel, their visions of torn skies and urgent warnings flooding her mind. Wyatt's voice sliced through the night again, closer now, laced with a desperation that cut deeper than Ellie wanted to admit. "Ellie, stop! You don't know what you're doing." His figure emerged from the shadows, the keepers fanning out behind him, their painted faces ghostly in the machine's glow. His badge gleamed, a bitter reminder of the man she'd once trusted, the man who'd betrayed her. Levi's grip tightened on his revolver, his voice low and fierce. "Stay back, Earp, or I swear I'll drop you where you stand." Ellie's hand went to her satchel, the shards pulsing like a heartbeat, urging her to act. Her scarf was gone, lost in the cave, but its stars lived in her resolve, a symbol of her mother's faith in her dreams. She stepped forward, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. "You're wrong, Wyatt. This isn't yours to guard. It's a message, and it chose me." Wyatt's eyes softened, but his hand hovered near his revolver. "You think you can handle it? The Skyfire's truth has broken stronger souls than yours. Let it go, Ellie, for your own sake." Jasper coughed, his laugh weak but sharp. "Hell, Earp, you sound like a preacher who's lost his flock. Let the lady do her thing. She's earned it." Levi shot Jasper a look, but his lips twitched, a flicker of humor breaking the tension. "Focus, Cole. We're not out of this yet." The machine above hummed louder, its light intensifying, and the shards in Ellie's satchel glowed so brightly they burned through the leather, casting star-like patterns across the meadow. She pulled them out, their warmth flooding her with a final vision. A sky mending itself, a machine awakening, a choice that would either save or doom. Her hands trembled, but she held the shards aloft, their light merging with the machine's, creating a bridge of radiance that pulsed like a living thing. The keepers froze, their chants faltering, and Wyatt's face paled. "Ellie, don't." But she was already moving, drawn to the center of the meadow where the light was strongest. Levi followed, his revolver still raised, his presence a steady anchor. "Whatever you're doing, Stargazer, make it quick," he murmured, his voice thick with trust. She knelt, placing the shards on the ground, their glow merging into a single blinding point. The machine descended, silent and graceful, its surface rippling like liquid metal. A panel opened, revealing a chamber within, its walls etched with the same spirals and stars that had haunted her journey. The shards rose, drawn into the chamber, and the machine hummed louder, a sound that vibrated in her bones, speaking in a language she felt rather than heard. The keepers surged forward, their knives flashing, but Levi fired into the air, the crack of his revolver halting them. "Next one's for keeps," he growled, his eyes locked on Wyatt. Ellie stepped into the chamber, her heart pounding as the light enveloped her. The visions came faster now. Worlds beyond, a warning of a storm that could shatter the earth, a plea to protect it. She saw herself, not as a banished dreamer, but as a guardian, chosen to carry the truth. The machine's voice was clear. The shards were a key, activating it to send a signal, a call for help to those who'd sent it long ago. She reached out, her fingers brushing a panel that pulsed with light. The machine responded, its hum softening, and a wave of energy rippled outward, knocking the keepers to their knees. Wyatt staggered, his badge falling to the grass, his face a mask of defeat. The machine's light dimmed, its task complete, and it rose silently into the sky, vanishing among the stars. Ellie stumbled out of the chamber, her legs weak, and Levi caught her, his arms strong around her. "You did it," he whispered, his voice rough with relief. "Whatever that was, you did it." She leaned into him, her breath shaky, the weight of the truth settling in her chest. "It's not over," she said, her eyes on the sky. "It was a signal. They're coming. Whoever sent it. We have to be ready." Jasper limped over, his grin lopsided but genuine. "Well, I'll be damned. You just saved the world, Stratton, and I didn't even get a front row seat." Levi chuckled, his arms still around Ellie, and she felt the warmth of his touch grounding her, a tether to the earth, when the stars felt too vast. "You're not stealing her thunder, Cole," he said, but his eyes were on Ellie, soft and proud. Wyatt rose, his face haggard, the keepers retreating into the shadows. "You've started something, Ellie," he said, his voice heavy. "I hope you're ready for what comes next." She met his gaze, no longer the girl who'd trusted him. "I am," she said, her voice firm, "and I'm not alone." Wyatt turned, disappearing into the night, the keepers following like ghosts. The meadow was silent now, the stars above a quiet witness to what had passed. Ellie's satchel was empty, the shards gone, but their light lingered in her, a truth she'd carry forever. Her scarf was lost, but its stars were in the sky, in her heart, a symbol of dreams that had led her here. Levi's hand found hers, his fingers intertwining with hers, a promise unspoken but felt. "What now, Stargazer?" he asked, his voice low, meant for her alone. She looked up, the stars brighter than ever, and smiled. "We keep looking up." Together, they turned, helping Jasper toward the horses, the meadow stretching before them, the mountains a silent guardian. The sky was vast, its secrets no longer just hers to chase, but theirs to share. As they rode into the dawn, the stars faded, but their light lived on in Ellie's eyes, in the warmth of Levi's hand, in the journey that had only just begun.